So we're going to cover these things, and I'll read it off the screen. I'm going to give you a quick intro into what this thing is, and it's about, and the reason I'm not calling it anything is because I want you to tell me what I should call it for the rest of the presentation. So a quick intro into it. Why is it a big deal, obviously? What is it? What isn't it? How does it actually work? I'm being very defensive about the word at the moment. What are some guidelines if you want to make it? And also, what other innovations? So we almost have, you have two presentations for the price of one. I'll do a little bit at the end, which is, you've heard quite a lot about AI and lots of really interesting things. I'll do a little bit at the end of what I see the future to be, maybe some of the things you need to know about. And also, if time permits, a little bit of QA. Hopefully that will work. So, what should we call it? Now, the whole point is you've probably seen them online. It's those fake out-of-home things that you've probably seen on social media. You've got three options. FOOH, which is fake out-of-home or faux out-of-home. You've got CGI ads, okay, interesting. Or you've got late entry VOO, which are kind of virtual out-of-home. So I can't really see, but who thinks it's going to be FOOH? Okay, who likes CGI? And who likes VOO? I think we're going to go with FOOH. Okay, we're going to go with FOOH. We're going to call it FOOH. Damn, because I've got a slide that says VOO on it. Never mind. Okay, FOOH it is. Thank you for that, bit of market research. So here's a quick intro into what it is. Who hasn't seen this? I know nobody's going to put their hand up, right? However, this is the Maybelline advert in London Underground, and actually what you're seeing at the end of it is actually the original ad that was a L'Oreal ad in New York. So you've seen these. It looks plausible. For the people who don't know, you go, oh, have you seen that big thing? Lots of people thought it was real, and this is what we're talking about today, fake out-of-home ads. Now, I won't go too much into it, but you know, it really blew up on TikTok, really blew up on Instagram, and that's what we're talking about today. So, did it work? Well, this is actually Maybelline's TikTok account, and if you look, average, I'd say you probably got about 20,000 views, maybe. So, just this one alone is about 15 times the average views, and the original one in New York, 13 million views. So for your billboard or for your activation, to get 13 million views is amazing. You can read some of these, some of the newspapers, some of the comments. Interestingly, out of here, people are saying, where is it? Can I come and see it? So you start to see some of the issues here. If you've flown to the UK and you go to the tube station to go and see where it is and it's not there, you're going to be a bit annoyed about that. So there are some very subtle dangers in where we're going with this, but we'll talk about those as we go. So did it work? Big yes. See what I did there? We've seen this before. So again, you may have seen this one. This was Magic Leap. They are augmented reality spectacles. Probably about 6 years ago now, this was, maybe 5 years. But this did the rounds on Facebook, on Instagram, that sort of thing. Everybody was on Facebook back in the day, Twitter, that sort of thing. So we've seen this. Everybody's kind of getting used to it. Now, if you've seen a car advert, probably in the last 5 years, none of the cars were real. I hate to break this to you, but almost no car adverts these days use actual cars. So this is the Mill in the UK, and they've built this rig you can see underneath their car. They can expand the wheelbase. They can do everything that matches the car they're trying to actually do the advert for. And somebody sits in it, and they spin around, and they then comp the car on top of it. So we're naturally predisposed to, these things are invisible to us now. We probably, now you look at a car advert after this, I'm really sorry, but it's not real. But you can start to spot things like the shadows are all really good. And even if you're watching live sports, so, you know, this is football. Again, if you didn't know this goes on, I'm really sorry. But no, the billboards in the background, they're all live. So lots of things you'll see printed on the actual pitch, they're not there. And all the real-time processing to actually put the players in front of it, all that sort of stuff is being done, and people don't even realize. So the public is used to it. And, you know, Levo will attest. This used to say pubic, so I'm sorry about that. Well caught. However, it's now in our world, so we need to have an opinion on it. And this is, hopefully, will lead you to get an opinion today. So, why is it a big deal? So, there's some things that, well, you know, why are we even talking about it, really? So, some things I need to talk about, maybe 6 or 7 things. First of all, you get access to the young, trendy platforms. So, you know, YouTube Shorts, Instagram, TikTok. So, this is where your new audience are. Out of home reaches everybody, as we know. Very specifically, you're getting a very different audience and a very wide audience. There is some science behind it as well. So if I said, can you see the cigar in the wall? Hands up who can see the cigar. Right, okay. So you're thinking I'm absolutely, like, what's he talking about? The cigar in the wall. It's just the wall. I'm going to draw a picture round the cigar. Okay. So what's going on here is the people who knew it have gone, oh, I know this one. I can see the cigar. I feel special. The people who couldn't see it are going, wait a minute, this is interesting. Now, if I get rid of that again, and I say, where's the cigar in the wall? You'll go, well, it's quite obviously there, right? So there are three types of thing that have just gone on there. There's confused people at the beginning going, wait a minute. There's the people who go, oh, I know this one. And now there's a whole new group of people that go, I solved it. If I see this again, I'm going to say it's there. And I can probably search for this on the internet straight when I come away from here and do it to my friends as well. So that thing that you just did, you achieved some sort of breakthrough when you were watching it. That's really important. A little chemical signal's gone through your head. You feel better about that image than just a picture of a wall. So that's what's happening with these fake out-of-homes. You go, wait a minute, is that real? And you're trying to work at it. So that is a great advertising benefit. Obviously, if you're using social media to distribute these, your origin story may be in Latvia, but your audience is everywhere. It's pretty obvious. I needed to put that slide in anyway, but it is pretty powerful as well. Now, this is the slightly not so great thing, or so great thing. You could probably sidestep some production costs as well by doing these virtual out-of-home things. For instance, you may not need any license location fees. You may need to sort of cordon off a street to do your thing. Not anymore, because it's all virtual. You don't have to adhere to any pixel specs. There's no width and there's no height to any of this sort of thing. Likewise, there's no media ingestion. You don't have to sort of meet the deadline and make sure it's in and distributed to all of the screens, all the different totems and 24 sheets, that sort of thing. And also, your project management, you can just do away with all your out-of-home because it's just purely an online social video build, pretty much. Advertising standards probably don't need to get involved because it's just about online. So there's a lot of other things in here, and there's a couple of other things you probably don't need to pay for as well, which is that 50% of the billboards goes into the local community. You don't have to pay for that either. So there's a lot of really interesting things going on in here. And this is really interesting. It's just, this was mentioned earlier, so premium signaling. Now, this is a jet that you can hire if you're an Instagrammer. You hire this for a couple of hours, you get all your mates, and you take some pictures of you going on your private jet, and it never leaves the floor. And likewise, you can hire the Lamborghini as well if you really want to. So this is all about premium signaling. So if your billboard appears on Times Square, your brand has made it. If all you've got to do is Photoshop your brand into a Times Square media place, your brand has made it, and nobody really knows, but you didn't do any of the hard work to make it. So this kind of premium signaling, by being around these spaces that people are now borrowing for these fake advertising, that's a really, it's a powerful thing. Excuse me, I do have a cough. I will cough. Trends is really interesting as well. So if you've ever seen the trend bell curve, you have the innovators and the early adopters over on this side, and they get really excited about all this sort of stuff. It's kind of where we're at with AI right now as well. Now, if it jumps the chasm, something big happens and it goes into the public world, then you get the early majority, you get the late majority, and what are called the laggards. Those are the people who just sort of, they don't really want to get involved, but they hear about it last thing. Now, this is called the early market, and this is called the mainstream market. I think we're about here right now. So we're just on this bell curve. Could peak pretty quickly, may actually have a couple of years left in it. So just bear that in mind. It is a trend, and we're currently traversing it, but I think it has jumped the chasm. That's why you're hearing about it now. Also, it is pushing creativity. So there's quite a lot that you've seen. Even the fact that we're even talking about it is pushing creativity. People are doing some really interesting stuff with it. So these numbers at the bottom, millions. Those are numbers that any normal social campaign, any brand would absolutely die for on social media. So there's something going on here that is actually pushing creativity. Obviously, whether it's real or not doesn't really matter. So what is FOOH? That's why I was, because I didn't know what you were going to say. What is it? So there's a spectrum, okay? Over on this side, we have probably somebody in their bedroom, a 3D person, like not a 3D person, but somebody who does 3D, probably sat in their underpants with a laptop doing CGI, okay, over on this side. That's probably social media content. Over on this side, we have the Holy Grail. So it's an official branded campaign which is based on a plausible out-of-home scenario. Everything is all good. Somewhere in the middle is probably an official campaign, but it's just using the world as a background. So it's more like an activation rather than out-of-home. And this is the interesting thing. We're calling it FOOH, but we're leaning a little bit into borrowing some stuff that's not really in our world. But we're calling it FOOH. Okay, and we sort of went, that's all ours, and we're owning that term. So just be aware that real false out-of-home is at that end, but really we're talking about that end forward is a good playground to be in. This bit, not so much. That's why I've written it quite big. I think there are some rules to it. 3 of them, of the 5 that I'm about to say, I think are critical. 2 of them are optional. So the first one is to be virtual or false. It can't be real. Obviously, it's a bit obvious. So first one, the ad did not exist, tick. Okay, great. Second one, did the brand actually exist? Now, if you've just made up a thing, it's a tomato rolling through a village or just a boat going across the sky, then it's just a piece of CGI. So the brand needs to be a thing. Likewise, was it authorized by the brand? So rather than somebody at home just saying, I'm going to do some CGI with a can of Coke, go, great, well, it's not an official campaign. So I think those are the 3 ones. It needs to be false, it needs to be real, and it needs to be authorized. And there's 2 optional ones as well, which is where we get into this out-of-homeness. Was it actually based on a viable out-of-home location? And also, was it in partnership with that out-of-home location? Or media owner, should I say. So those are the 2 optionals, and that's where it gets a little bit blurry. So those are the rules that I've applied to when I've got some examples. And you're probably thinking, well, this is great, you've only shown us one example so far, and I'm going to show you all the examples now. So this is that Maybelline one. Let's start with that one. There's a couple of things about this one, other than the fact that many people thought it was actually real. You will notice in the tube ad, they've also put a Maybelline ad in the background. So they've directly photoshopped, quote unquote, an ad on top of somebody's paid-for media space. Now, if I was Global Media in the UK, or if I was Transport for London, who own essentially the rights to advertising on the London Underground, I'd be knocking on somebody's door going, you can't do that, right? However, worldwide fame for this, so people commented, they wanted to come and see it, all that sort of good stuff. So this is what really most people would say this is the one that started it. Now, Madison Square Garden's Sphere, everybody's heard of it, it's just broken onto the scene. Truff, this is like a chili sauce. They went, okay, we're not only going to steal one of the biggest screens in the world, we're going to make a giant bottle of barbecue sauce come out of it. 2 things I'd note about it. One, it's done really well. The CGI, the shadows, the reflections, it's done really, really well. Tick. The other one is, if you try to buy the media on the MSG Sphere, apparently it's nearly $500,000 a day. So if somebody comes along and goes, yeah, we'll have that, we'll just Photoshop a thing on top of that, again, there'll be a knock at the door going, you can't do that. So, but at the moment, nobody's really knocking at people's doors. So it's really interesting, this one. As you see my little scoring thing down here, the only thing that it wasn't really was it wasn't a partnership. Everything else is true, nearly. So, and then we look at this one. This was actually for Manchester City, football club in the UK. So the things that aren't real in here, all the buses, the cabs going in front of it, not real. Those are all CGI. So I thought what was really interesting is getting 4 of your friends to sort of do that at the bottom of it. Give it a little bit of realism. There's also really good stuff. It's done really well. There's the shadows, the reflections. Everything's really, really good. So just particularly well done. And it was actually on the official Manchester United TikTok account and Instagram, and it was to promote their tour in Japan. So all good. Lots of ticks. Again, it wasn't in partnership. There are some billboards in the back that have been conveniently placed with another ad. Again, you go, oh, that's probably a bit awkward. However, it happens in Latvia too. Yay. So, yeah, woo. So it's arguably, I'd say this is almost too subtle to be effective. So you could have probably just done a ginormous one of these and lent it up against, H&M's and taken a video of it. However, it did get some attention as well. So arguably, I'd say it's probably too subtle. And there's a little law or rule coming up soon about how much magic do you need in these to make it really effective. But, was it a local out-of-home? No, but usually those 2 come together. If it's not an out-of-home location, you can't really have a partnership anyway. So those 2 rules are kind of joined. However, happens here too. Excellent. Well done. You're on the map. Now, this is an example of like, how could you make that a little bit more magical? This is in Dubai, and if there's a few clues, I would say, that how do you know something is not real, one of the big clues at the moment is if it has the Burj Khalifa in the background, it's that company in Dubai that keeps making loads and loads of these who've probably done it. So it's a weird thing. If it zooms in and out really quickly, or if there's Burj Khalifa in the background, it's probably fake, which is a weird set of rules. However, this was actually official. It was great. Now, is it a billboard? No, because I went to Google Street, and I found exactly, it took me a while, but I found out exactly where this is filmed, and I took a picture on Google Street, Burj Khalifa, and you'll notice there's no ginormous billboard in there. So sometimes even you just make up a billboard if you need a billboard to place your thing on. So we're even faking the actual panel that we need behind it as well, which is kind of interesting. There you go. Now this one is altogether kind of interesting. Now it sort of looks like a billboard, but sort of isn't. You've sort of seen it before, but you sort of haven't. You've probably seen these as those light projections you got maybe 10 years ago. There would be a laser projection and the building would fold in on itself. And we've sort of not seen a lot of those recently. However, this is pretending to be one of those. It's Pull and Bear, it's official, it was on their website. Now, it's not a media space, but it's just a piece of CGI. The really interesting thing about this is it uses this character, and you'll see this character a lot. If you look for virtual out-of-home or VOO or CGI advertising, this is Zlu. Zlu is a giant alien who is visiting Earth and has its own social media presence, even has an agent, et cetera, et cetera. Now, when Zlu appears in things, it really takes off. Has been, with huge brands, Lagerfeld, Swarovski, all that sort of stuff. So generally speaking, you can even now hire a virtual influencer to be in your virtual out-of-home as well. So pick your virtual aliens well when you're casting for your adverts, which I think is just really interesting. And then we've seen this other one. This is also from L'Oreal, same as the Maybelline brand we saw at the beginning. Now, there's a couple of, great, this is for sort of lipstick, and it was all saying, it's long-lasting, and this is how they were doing that. So the story is good. It's demonstrating the product. There's a couple of things in here you'll notice as well. I would say, number plate, L'Oreal, giveaway. The words on the street you're about to see, it will say match resistance, and in the background you'll see the L'Oreal as well. So if you look really closely, you'll go, oh yeah, it's definitely branded. So they're not lying about it particularly, but everybody thought this was amazing, and of course it's French, so de cheveux, 2CV. They're doing all the good branding stuff as well, so I really like that, and it's a red one, etc. So that's good. And then, then we come up to this one. So this got a huge amount of heat as well, just because it was so subtle. So Alexandra Wang, so New York is really the story. So you see those bags where it says New York, Paris. New York is really the center. So if you didn't know that was Manhattan Bridge, you just go, it's just a bridge. But that's Manhattan Bridge. They're not talking about it. They've not done it on something obvious like the Burj Khalifa or the Eiffel Tower. They've kept it kind of subtle. And it's also really kind of subtle as well. So one of the rules I think is really interesting is don't be too obvious. If you're from New York, you know exactly what that is. And also you're thinking, not many people know what that is, and therefore, I've done that a bit of science where I've had a little bit of an endorphin rush as well. So really, really subtle. And the other thing I'd say is you don't have to be too clever about the idea. In advertising, there are a few cliches. If you're struggling with your product, make it bigger, make it smaller, make it 1 million of them, make it the one in the world, whatever it is. So this is just make it bigger. That seems to work with these. Likewise, Barbie. Now we're starting to get a few reds going on in here, and they don't actually sort of match up with our rules anymore. So this was not official. A lot of people have seen this, thought it was official. There was a lot of marketing going around at the moment for Barbie, and this wasn't part of it. So if you are Mattel, you were asked about this and said, look, it's not one of ours. Likewise, Warner Brothers, who are behind the film, said, not one of ours either. Interestingly, neither of those two massive brands who are very litigious about copyright, neither of them asked for this to be taken down as far as I can tell. So they know the power of this, and they thought, oh, yeah, this has got millions and millions of views as well. So it wasn't official, but it's interesting. Right at the moment, people are running with it because it's very interesting and people are looking at them. Again, Burj Khalifa in the background, that's how you know it's not real. So there you go. This one, I'm not sure. I couldn't find any evidence of whether it was real or not, but there's a couple of things. Again, the second one is if you zoom in and out of a video a lot and you get a little bit of autofocus on each one of those, it's almost a dead giveaway something is not real. So as you see here, zooming in, zooming out, I don't know whether the last time you took a photo or a video and zoomed in and out a lot, not many people actually do it, but in the CGI world, they sort of think it looks like it's sort of edgy and hand done. So I don't think this is real. However, this is in Berlin. This is a Berlin TV mast. It's not real, yet it got a huge amount of views as well. So, it doesn't really matter. Again, it's the same law. Just make it big, and people will view it at the moment. So there you go. However, what isn't FOOH? So these are all along that spectrum of rules, and some of them do work, some of them don't. Some of them work more effectively than others. There are some things that just aren't. This is actually mist projection or water projection. This has been around for a while, and these can actually come in little units like this, and you can interact with them, and it just basically, it's almost like a vape, and it just projects onto the vape. And these can happen in bays, in the sea. They can happen in municipal parks, wherever it is. But this is just being projected. It looks like a hologram. Only works at night, really, but you can see how they work. You just project onto mist. If it's windy, it doesn't work so well. If it's foggy, it works brilliantly. There you go. So those aren't. Also worth mentioning, this is on that left side of the spectrum. So this is, it's a 3D render. Great, it's actually a character. It's a known character, but it's not really a brand as such. Somebody's just downloaded a 3D character, and they've just animated it. This billboard doesn't exist. It's not really doing anything. So on those rules, it is sort of real, kinda. It's not official. There's no out of home. But this has got 20 million combined views. So you don't even have to be that smart. So I'm just saying, for us, in the out-of-home, the branded client world, you need to be on that side of it. But there are people over here just making stuff at the moment that just looks plausible and interesting. So this isn't what I would class as FOOH, but it's still people playing around. This is trying to also pretend to be anamorphic 3D. So we'll come on to that in one slide. But this is also not real, because it is a real virtual thing. So this is Snapchat glasses. Remember the little Snapchat glasses from probably 7 or 8 years ago? If anybody would like to buy some, come and let me know. I've got 3 pairs of them. However, this is actual augmented reality. So you're wearing spectacles, and this is what you see. So you often see videos online, especially of the likes of Meta or Amazon, showing what they're doing with their virtual or augmented reality. And pass-through mode is what this is kind of called on the new glasses. So you often see things like this, and that is actually real. So you have to be careful for that. And that anamorphic thing that I've just mentioned, if you've been living in a cave, you won't have seen this. But normally, if you stand about here and you look at this billboard right, it will look like the 3D things. And that was almost like the gateway drug, as it's called, into this kind of, we're not sure what's real and what's not. So it's created a huge amount of interest. And a lot of this fake CGI has jumped on that because they couldn't book these because they're expensive, or they just take a little bit of time to do. And that's, I think, what the genesis of all of this has come from. So how does it actually work? So I'm going to try and talk over it. Now, again, I think I've done a really simple version of how it works. You start off with some footage on your phone. Doesn't really matter. Your phone is absolutely fine. If you watched the Apple keynote recently, that was all filmed on a phone. So your phone is fine. Ideally, it's jiggly, so it looks real and a human has done it. However, what you then need to do is import that into a piece of software. If you've got After Effects, which is part of the Adobe suite, it does it. There's a little drop down. And what it'll do is it'll track that footage. So if your footage is moving about, what it'll do is it will look for items in that footage that it can track. And as it tracks them, it just sees in perspective how they're moving. And it can infer where the camera was in reality. So that data, it turns into 3D data. So it says the camera was probably about here, the ground was probably about here, and the perspective was about here. So the camera lens was probably a certain number. So it basically tracks the floor. And then what it will do is you then take those points and you take that virtual camera, as it's called, you take those into your 3D package, and that camera will move in your 3D package. So what you then do is you then go, right, I'll put my image, or I'll put my 3D object on that, and as I look through the camera, it moves just like the actual 3D, the real footage would have done. You then render your item so it looks lovely. Maybe it's got shadows on it or whatever. And then you comp it back into your original footage. So your original footage is moving about, your object is now moving about, and they now move the same. Okay? And that's how those things work. So every single one of those you've seen, real footage, motion tracked, camera data has gone into a 3D package, and then the thing has been put on. And right at the end, you do some things like lens flares, and you make all the color the same and whatever, probably back in After Effects. So that's the process. It's relatively quick, relatively automated as well. So you render it out, and then you've got your footage. So I'm going to try and talk over this. This is somebody, well done to Daniel for this one, because it's perfect. So you start with your footage. You can see it motion tracking. Dots have appeared everywhere, and it's gone, this is where your ground plane is. So you've gone into your 3D package and say, I want to put a new little kind of hut in that scene. So you get your hut, you import your 3D footage, and you put it on that square. So as you'll notice, it's moving weirdly, because that's how the actual camera was in that original footage. So there you go, so you've rendered it out. And you can actually sort of put your rendering in the back of your 3D scene as well, just so you can get a better example. So here it is. Now, what you're trying to do now is match the sunlight, so the shadows are in the right direction, but you're noticing the sunlight won't fall on that building in the background, because that's not part of what you're currently casting a shadow on. So what you need to do is basically set this what's called a shadow catcher. So on the floor, shadow catcher, but how are you going to get that vertical shadow? And this is where you start to map the real world. You put it in there, there's your shadow catcher, but you need probably one on there, just a fake one. So you're going to get a vertical shadow and a horizontal shadow. Great, you render that out, and then all of a sudden you've now got a shadow going upwards that you can comp on, and then you go, right, okay, the colors aren't quite right, so I'm just going to adjust a few colors here and there, so the sun looks about right. And there we have it. It's flickering a bit just because of the rendering, but you've got a virtual thing with shadows on top of your real footage. So thank you very much for Daniel for that one. That was, hopefully I did that some justice. And here's an example of, for instance, the frame in Dubai. Again, thank you for the footage. Really Lucia, I think. Thank you for that. You can see in between the processes that have gone on there. So you've mapped the 3D. You've then put something in it, and then you've put some effects on it. And that's your final thing. And again, this is something that went out. Everybody thought it was amazing and real. Again, part of the Manchester City tour. So that shows you how to do it. And here are 3 other examples showing you the process before and after. So well done to Vertex CGI for these. It's absolutely full channel. Some of them show you behind the scenes. So you can see this was the original footage, and this was what was comped on top of it. And this one, maybe not so great. You could say the rendering isn't particularly real, and you can tell it's kind of fake. With a little bit more work on that, I think it could be great. Burj Khalifa in the background, you'll notice as well. So each time you see that, you have to go, I'm not sure it's real. So there you go. So hopefully that gives you a guide of how to do it. And there are also some guidelines I think would be useful. So before I go on to the actual guidelines, you need to know what probably the strongest ways of not doing it. So here are some tales of warning, basically. This was Gymbox, and Gymbox in the UK put out this advert on social media. It was a good concept. You know, it's all about aerial classes, so fitness classes on ropes, I guess. And they put it on top of a bus so that people in tall buildings could read it. What a great idea. Only they didn't pay for any of the media. It was just really what you call a scamp, or basically a concept in the advertising world. But they put it out there, and rightly so, the entire media industry went, what are you doing? You can't just put your adverts and Photoshop them onto the real world where it's a payable media space. And that's somebody else's business, by the way. So lots of sort of pundits went, I love the advert, really, really good. And then the whole industry went, but if you do that, the entire industry breaks apart. If you just start photoshopping, putting faces on other faces, you can't really do that. So, and again, advertising standards would not need to get involved in this because it's just a social media image rather than something that affects the kind of the advertising standards in the real world that normal humans could see on TV or in reality. And BA, British Airways at Glastonbury, is another word of warning, really. So Glastonbury, a big music festival in the UK, are very careful about how they advertise and what advertising they allow on site. So British Airways have had this campaign, multiple award-winning campaign. It's a brilliant campaign, but they just went one step too far. They didn't, as we say, read the room. They didn't really get the vibe of what was going on. So they had this great, extension of their campaign, and they comped up a billboard in Glastonbury, put their copy on it, and then sent it out. And of course, Glastonbury were like, you can't do that, because we wouldn't have allowed you to do that in the first place. And likewise, the audience who go there went, this is just a big corporate stepping over the mark and trying to put some of their message in our festival. So they really didn't read the room. And it was essentially the agency plus the brand. Didn't quite get it right. Now, I have no affiliation with any of these, so I can say what I want about them. But that got talked about quite a lot as an example of what not to do. So here are some rules, I think, if you need to have a go at them. So this sits outside most regulation. So it might be a good thing or a bad thing, but it's usually social media rules that apply, because really what you're doing is you're creating social media content, because no billboards were harmed during the making of any of these. Licenses for trademarks. If you try to use the Eiffel Tower at night, that is a trademarked image. If you try to use the skyscrapers in New York, probably the Empire State Building, is a licensed image. So if you try to use it, you need to pay somebody because it's in there in the footage. So if you are going to use somewhere, just check that anything that you can see in there is actually licensed and you paid the licenses for that. Talk to the out-of-home media owner or whoever owns the space that you are thinking of doing it on. There may be something you can actually do there anyway, which will accentuate it as well. So, make it, don't fake it, maybe. Uncanny valley is a term that we use in the movie industry. So when you're trying to do CGI or recreate a character, it's either make it so unrealistic it's CGI, or make it so real that people don't know. Somewhere in between, people just go, oh, it's not quite right. That's called the uncanny valley. It's sort of real, but it's just not right. So if you're going to do it really well, invest in the CGI. That truff hot sauce coming out of the sphere, I thought was done brilliantly, although there are issues with it, obviously. Don't pretend it's real. But also don't tell them specifically it's not real. I'm aware that's a bit vague, but for instance, what you can do is you can put out an image and go, our new, oh my word, look at this, hashtag CGI, awesome. You're not actually saying, look at this fake thing we've done, hopefully you like the fakery we've done in our fake image. But likewise, you're not going, this has just happened, we can't wait for you to see it. So don't lie about it, but also you don't necessarily have to say it's fake either. And the fake vibe, be careful of that, because obviously it can rub off on your image as well. If you do something where your brand or your product can't be supported, people think it does something it doesn't, then people go, wait a minute, I don't trust you. We've heard this morning about transparency and trust are really important in your brand. If you lose those, it takes a long time to get it back. So just be careful what you do and make sure you don't overstep the mark. Be playful. But just try not to be fake. Others can copy you as well. What we've seen is, if you look at a lot of these, everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. And on that initial thing, it's the people on the left-hand side. So the people who are in their bedroom with a copy of Cinema 4D or Blender and After Effects, and they can make this stuff as well. So you might need to be aware, if you show the way, people might go, well, we can do it as well. And they might do it to your brand as well. The bigger your brand, the more attraction you might get to it as well. So have a policy. Like Barbie, like Mattel, for instance, they went, yeah, we know it's bad, but we're going to leave it for now. They probably had a policy about that. There was certainly a lawyer's discussion went on somewhere. Keep it subtle. That thing with the cigar, keep it subtle. You need the aha moment. You need the endorphin rush. And also make sure it's part of a real campaign. If it's just a piece of fluff on the internet, that's probably where it sits. As soon as you start to see real advertising, real billboards that back this up as well, you basically put it all into the same bucket in your head of trust and amazingness. And also launch it well. So yes, this is social media. If you're not experts in social media, make sure you've got a social media plan. Get an influencer. Maybe even if your star in there is a virtual influencer, there are those sorts of things. But just make sure you've got a plan for launching this alongside your other branded assets as well. If you took 4 things away, keep it on the real side of magic. If you don't have enough magic, it's not going to be interesting. If it's too real, you wouldn't know either. So keep it on the real side of magic. Talk to the in real life. That's what IRL stands. That's what the cool kids call it, IRL. Talk to the location owner. Just make sure you're good to do it, and just make sure you haven't ignored any of the things that you could make it absolutely amazing by talking to them. Make it part of a wider campaign, and also do it now before that trend starts to wane. So maybe in a couple of years' time, it will just be the same as the metaverse was last year, the same as NFTs were the year before. They were the big hot ticket. Now, if you did a metaverse right now, it's like, oh, it's a little bit 2 years ago, maybe a year ago. So do it right now. I think you're still good, okay? So now go out and make some. That's why go and do it. So you have my permission. If there's any legal issues, it's not my fault. So now that was the first bit. Now you have a quick second bit. How long have I got? Good, good. How long have I got? Good. Okay, excellent. I'll work with that. So I'm going to do the second bit, which is just hopefully quite quick. Other things you should probably know about, trends you should know about. Hopefully you know about a bunch of these already. If not, there's a video of this. Hopefully I'll share this as well. You can look these up later. They've all got URLs on the bottom if you want to follow them up. However, before I go into trends, I just want to talk about hype cycles. Gartner, research company, do hype cycles every year. You can love them or hate them, it doesn't really matter, but it serves a purpose. For anything at the moment, there is a trend, there is hype. People hear about it and want it to be amazing. There are 5 areas of hype. First of all, there's an innovation trigger, a technology happens which makes something possible that wasn't there before. People hear about it, which is the peak of inflated expectations. AI can solve the world, it can kill everybody. What are we expecting from it? Right at the peak, and then you go, well, actually, it's not that good. The metaverse, we're all going to live in the metaverse in 5 years' time, and then you realize the metaverse isn't that interesting, and it doesn't really work, and the AR headsets are expensive. And then you go into the trough of disillusionment, and then eventually you go, well, we can use maybe the metaverse for recruitment or looking at drains under the ground, and you got the slope of enlightenment, and then you make it productive, i.e. you turn it into bricks and mortar, or it becomes a product of a platform. So you'll notice at the moment there's some great things on there, generative AI, post-quantum cryptography, one of my favorite subjects. If you ever want to be bored, come and have a chat to me about that. But some really good things on there, but you'll notice this is really, really empty on here. We're sort of constipated on AI at the moment. Everything's about AI. Everything else has gone that way. NFTs, the metaverse, it's gone off. So everybody's expecting everything about this trend. There are other things going on, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about now. I've done it really quickly. Now, next and future, quite obvious, things you should worry about now, things don't lose any sleep about it, but just be aware it's happening over in the future. There's only a couple of examples for each one. So let's talk about now. What am I excited by? What am I seeing right now that other people should know about? We just had a great presentation about generative AI. If you've not got Firefly and you're in a creative agency, Firefly is an Adobe product. It has been productized. If you want to do all of that stuff you've just seen, you can also do it within an Adobe product. You want the dog to be bigger, you want the dog to be a cat, you want I want this to be 3D, I want it to be 3D made out of cake. It can do all of that. I want this person to be smiling, frowning. It's all just a text prompt away. So you can create templates, images, you can do all of that stuff, all just through image generation. The new version of ChatGPT is what's called multimodal, the very new version. So it can do images, text, it can do the whole thing all in one go, and it can do adjustments as well. So that's kind of interesting. This is not me. As we've seen, avatars can happen. So I've trained this on an avatar. This is called HeyGen. And it looks, if you didn't know, it looks a bit like me, but I can spot the differences. There's no Burj Khalifa in the background. However, that's not actually me. It's 30 seconds of video, about 3 minutes later on to get a better version of my voice. But other than that, it sounds pretty much like me when it's actually talking. This is me doing my weekly video report. I could probably get away with it not actually doing it. So if you work in a customer services industry, or you want a campaign where you're creating personalized video for each of your customers, this is interesting. Third-party data, as we know, GDPR is a thing. It's harder and harder to get hold of that third-party data, so data on your audience from somebody else. So first-party data and novel data are the two really interesting areas to look into. First-party data, data that you own. If you have an app, a website, an interaction, some way of getting your own data, collect it and use it well. But novel data is really interesting. There are huge amounts of data sets. If you are a strategist and you've got a little twinkle in your eye and a bit of mischief, you can find some really interesting data sets. This one, for instance, a couple of years old now, but it says that if you are a gin drinker and you drink gin, you are more likely to impulse purchase on Amazon. And you're more likely to go for clothing, movies, games, tech, food, in that order. Software, strangely, when you're drunk on gin, you don't buy software. However, how would you do your media planning if you knew that gin drinkers at 9 o'clock at night are more likely to buy a piece of clothing you're trying to advertise? What would you do with that data? How would you change your media plan? So look, there are many more of these. I've got lots of different novel media data sources as well, but really interesting. Now this thing, I do actually have one here. Look, it's the same one. This is called a Flipper Zero, 170 euros. This has made hacking fun. So now I can do all of these things. The point of this one is how secure is your infrastructure? How secure are your campaigns? How secure is your business? I can open hotel doors, for instance. I'm not going to tell you which hotel I'm in, but I can open the hotel doors with this. If you have a Tesla, I can make the flap go up and down. If I'm in a bar, I can turn the television off. I can do all sorts of things. With a few extensions to this, I can do a lot of things. I can make traffic lights turn red or green in America. So I can do a lot of things with this. The point is, it's made hacking interesting and accessible. So don't worry about it, but if you want to come and see that, I will show you how it works. I can also scan your credit card and all that sort of stuff. Next, let's go for next. So we're getting a little bit further. So synthetic data, this is called. So how the data you have access to, that third-party, first-party data, you can also gain synthetically. So this is the Omniverse by NVIDIA, and they're big for video cards, but they can also create this virtual world. Now, if you're trying to train your autonomous car, all you've got to do is create a really super hyper-realistic world and then just drive it around. You've got the data that you need. When it's foggy, if you're a billboard owner, let's say, for instance, how will the trees grow over the next 20 years? Because, you know, the sort of opportunity to view, how does that change when buildings happen? Likewise, you know, if you go around a corner and there's a deer, what happens? So a lot of decisions in the future will be based on projecting your data forwards and synthesizing the data to base your decisions on now. So media planning could be synthetic. Now, this is an end-to-end video made completely with generative AI. Script was done in ChatGPT. Image samples were done in Midjourney. They were taken over basically to Stable Diffusion and Runway ML. The script music was created, and you'll see some things that it's not great at. Mouths, it's not great at. Interfaces with mouths. Fingers, not brilliant with fingers either. But this was a couple of months ago. It's getting better every single day. Now, if you can create personalized video from a couple of prompts, that's really interesting. So I've had to play with a few of these, and it's a little bit manual at the moment, but that's only going to get better. This is the Quest 3, so Meta's headsets, so virtual R headsets. I mean, they're big. You notice when somebody's got them on, it's like an egg box on somebody's head. But the interesting thing, all the new headsets have what's called pass-through. So they have cameras on them that you can see straight through them, but you can also project onto them. So they're essentially augmented reality. And of course, there's this phrase when Google first had their glasses called glass holes. So assholes who wears glasses. And they walk into places and they record everything on their glasses. And people just punch them in the nose. And 5 or 6 years later, we now have the new glass holes. They're going into bars. This guy here. You know, fine, but everybody's like, okay, what do you want? But this person over here, I Googled, has anybody driven a car with augmented reality glasses on? Everybody said no. Of course there's somebody driving a car. So it's interesting where these are going. These are putting billboards in the real world, essentially. And then you've got somebody like, you know, we're talking about programmatic media. This is actually Google and their Performance Max platform extending it. If you don't have quite the media you need for your programmatic media campaign, it will make them up using all that generative AI good stuff. Images that you don't have, voiceovers you don't have, scripts you don't have, videos that need to be edited, et cetera, et cetera. You put as many bits as you've got into the machine, tell it what you want, and you can help it create the rest. So really interesting targeted media, essentially supported by the platform as well. Now we're going into the future slightly, and obviously the first one, look at those, when I was saying, you know, the future is probably going to be augmented. This is a really good example. Doesn't exist anymore, by the way. This was a sort of a startup that then disappeared. However, this was all when NFTs were brilliant. You bought your NFT, you decided where you wanted it to be in the real world, and then you published that, and then somebody could then subscribe to your vision, and as they walk down the street looking at your vision, they would see all of your NFTs, where you wanted them to be. Now, if you then say each one of those is a billboard, somebody's walking down the screen, everybody's seeing their own different version of reality, but interacting in the same world. How do you deal with that? Planning consent for billboards might get a whole lot easier in the future. However, you know, this is a long way away, quite frankly. This is a long way away. But you can imagine quite in the future, this is going to happen. This is a couple of years old now, but actually they did an update a couple of weeks ago. So this was the update a couple of weeks ago, and it is an interactive, color-changing dress. Now, in reality, it's not quite as cool as you think. You look, there's lots of scales, little scales. Each one is a screen that can go white or black. So it's It's a bit like a sort of privacy glass. However, they're sort of interactive to an extent, but you can start to think, okay, that's interesting. If I can now have my clothes, imagine this, actually selling you something, then that's interesting. Everybody becomes a screen, and if everybody becomes a screen, the world becomes essentially just one big media frenzy. And you can see where BMW went last year, and they've increased it on this year. So this was at CES, the Consumer Electronics Show. And this uses the same ink as your Kindle. If you ever had a Kindle, if you turn the power off to this, it stays like that. So imagine going home and you've got a white house and you make your car go white. You go to work and it's blue building and you make it go blue. It blends in. If you steal a car and they're looking for a red car, it's quite easy to then turn it into a black car, for instance. But likewise, you can imagine putting adverts on this, parking it up in a car park and walking away. The cameras around it will tell you whether you actually had any person look at it or not. So screens around us, not necessarily official screens. And then just finally, just to quite literally blow your mind, this is reaching into somebody's actual mind and visualizing the images in their head. So the way this works is lots of people were shown images, or lots of people were shown thousands of images, and as they were shown the images, one after another, they were in an MRI scanner. The MRI scanner was reading their brain data. So for every picture of a train, they got the brain data, and they showed enough people pictures of the same train to get some sort of trend in that data. So later on, put somebody else in an fMRI scanner, just listen for that same data, and they can say, we're pretty sure they were looking at this train. And if you do that enough, you can start correlating data in the head to what they might have been seeing, to the point where, if you are shown these images here, these are the images that got brought out of their brain. So if you're thinking, what did I dream of last night? You can actually now visualize your dreams, which would be quite interesting. Imagine if you could sell those. That would be amazing. But likewise, if you just want to know, did anybody see your adverts? Make them walk down the street, put them in an MRI scanner, fMRI scanner, and pull the images straight out of their brain, and you can get absolute proof whether they saw your advert or not, effectiveness, essentially for real. So, this is all done with machine learning and, generative neural networks, etc. However, if you want to take something away from today, that's where we're going probably, selling your dreams for money on the internet. Hopefully, that's it. You survived. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. My main takeaway, stop buying gin.
Yes, yeah. No, stop drinking gin.
Luckily, I am mostly a whiskey guy myself, so I have managed to avoid bad purchases.
Good choice.
Obviously, we have a couple of questions. And I'm going to pick this one first because it's kind of what I wanted to ask myself. Don't these FOOHs make too big of a negative impact for all those who believed it was real and wanted to see it?
I think that's the interesting bit about social media is the place you go to disprove what you think. So I don't think there's anybody who's going to see the Maybelline tube train and go, do you know what? I'll put down stop what I'm doing, I'm going to go down there right now. They're going to go onto Facebook, they're going to go onto Twitter and go, have you seen this thing? And they go, yeah, it's not real. The first comment is always, it's not real. And then you're okay at that point. So yes, but in reality, people are smarter than that. At least on the second search that they do.
True, but I personally did feel sad when I realized, it's not real. I really wanted to see it like in real life. That would be cool, but then I felt sad for a moment.
So that's what I was saying about that. Just be careful with the fake. It doesn't transfer. So make it a joy, and you go, it's not real, but it is amazing.
Fair point, yeah. Thank you for your answer.
No problem.
And another question is, how and should you explain to your audience that it's not real and you should not go to London for the mascara train?
As I said, some people have just put #CGI, and they just go, or they've done a little wink. They've just done something very subtle. So, our next real campaign, and they put it in quotes. So they've been playful. Like if you just say, here's our new campaign, it's for a thing, go down to the tube, and it's too much. So most people, what I've seen is they've done it really subtly, and they've just tongue-in-cheek, as we call it. They've just gone, wink, wink, here's our new totally real campaign and they'll just mention it. And of course, if you're a bit slow, you go, it's totally real. But of course, you'll realize fairly soon. So I think just nudge people to know that you're being playful with them in the copy that you launch it with.
All right, understood. Thank you.
No problem.
Now, there's just a couple of compliments. Thank you, very inspirational. Hope to see those more, but not too many, but because then it will be boring.
Yeah, by the way, just quick plug, if you do like these sorts of things, for free, I just do a video on YouTube of all the latest trends for the week. So I'll see if I can get a link, because tune in and it's free. Nobody watches it, so if even half of you did it, I'd double my audience.
There's one very important question.
Yes.
Especially considering that I personally am an IT security expert. Mm-hmm. Are you hacking us now?
No. But interesting, that device, which is I guess what you're talking about,
yes.
If I was in this space, I can read all the Wi-Fi networks, that's fine. I can actually, I can pretend to be a Wi-Fi network, so the free network, and you log on and I'll get all of your details from that. I can also just sniff the air, so that sounds weird, but digitally sniff the air for things like Wi-Fi or any Bluetooth signals. I can literally sniff all the signals going on, and I can capture it and I can play it back. So if somebody opens a door with a thing, I can just stand by it, sniff it, and play it back. In reality, when you get this thing out of the box, it doesn't quite do all the cool stuff. You need to know really what you're doing. It's like buying a set of lock picks. Day one, you're not very good at picking locks. You can't pick a lock. But by day 100, you know how to pick a lock. So with this thing, it's a novelty, but if you really persevere, you can do some proper danger with it. And I'm not hacking you right now. But if you just, if you waft your credit card, or if I walked past your back pocket or your purse or your handbag, I can read the cards in it, or the topmost card in it. So it might just be a supermarket card, but it might be your pass for work, and I can record that and replay it. So during COVID, 3 days a week you're supposed to be in, and I could take, by the way, everybody at Sky who's listening, I didn't do this, but I could take all of my colleagues' cards, scan them all, and if they weren't in that day, I can just go down to the gate and just scan them in, because I've got a copy of their card, for instance. I'm not saying I did it.
Fair point, thank you. And also, do you think fake out-of-home could harm the out-of-home industry, especially media owners?
Yes. Yeah, so no, there's a bit more to that, I guess. Yes, I think we've got to own it, and we've also got to start putting out. It's a little bit what America are trying to do to AI right at the moment. They're trying to own the rules to it, and I think to an extent we've got to do that a little bit. But I think the trend will go. I think it'll start to become just a thing that you need to add to the end of your campaign or part of your campaign. So I think at the moment, I think it's only good. And the only people that probably should be annoyed about it are the rightful media owners who've had a known brand Photoshop over their other ads that were on there. I would probably, I'd look down our media list and go, they're an advertiser. I'd probably have a chat with their media agency.
And this naturally actually leads into another question that just popped, that should we expect more strictly regulated environment due to AI-generated fake ads, news, and etc.? Probably yes.
Well, okay, there's fake ads and there's branded content. So that's really what we're talking about, is social media content. That's what we've talked about. Fake ads are manipulative and are usually there to do bad. So if you're talking about fake media, they're trying to get you to do something that is bad. And that's, I think, a place we shouldn't go to, or we should make sure. And that's about the social media platforms knowing that. America right now are trying to put watermarks on video. It's never going to work. However, we need some way of AI output being flagged to big platforms so that when it comes back and tries to be something it's not, it's authenticated and moved away. I think at the moment we're just talking about playful social media videos where a brand is totally up for it and they've just done some great partnerships. I think we're okay for now.
All right. And, well, last question for today and for you. What's your favorite shirt brand?
My favorite?
Shirt brand.
Shirt brand. Yeah. I should say call out to Claudio Lugli in the UK. That's Claudiolugli. Claudio Lugli. Yeah, just makes funky, weird shirts. Got really nice buttons, different colour buttons. Yeah, no, I think the older you get, the more, if you fall over, people need to find you. So wear like interesting shoes that are bright So the older I get, the brighter I will get. You know, make sure your socks get noticed by helicopters when they're searching for you. So yeah, but yeah, Claudia Lugli is the unofficial supplier of my shirts.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for all of your answers. It's been a real pleasure
Thank
having
you.
you here.